Alright, it's time to take a look at the Infernity archetype, the meta-relevant archetype from its inception to this very day. They were used in the 5D's anime by Kiryu Kyosuke, one of my favorite anime characters of all time. His character was written so well, both in the Crashtown arc and the Dark Signers arc from where they first emerged. So yeah, the prime gimmick of these are discarding your hands as fast as possible so their effects can go off, since their effects require you to have no cards in your hand. So let's jump into the wondrous box of Infernity cards and take a look at their first monster, that being Infernity Avenger. The one that Marvel skipped, obviously. And it's a tuner monster. And when a monster you control except Infernity Avenger is destroyed by battle with an opponent's monster and sent to the graveyard, while you have no cards in your hand, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. In that case, the level of this card is equal to the level of the destroyed monster. A bit too specific at first, but you fall in love with this effect as soon as you start playtesting. So yeah, this is an excellent target for Foolish Burial on one of their later trap cards, which we'll take a look at. And it is always advisable to run them at 3, because level 1 tuners are really one of the best levels for a tuner there are, next to level 2 tuners. An excellent target for 1/1 as well. And yeah, nothing pretty much to say about this one. Let's move on to their next monster, another level 1 known as Infernity MIRAGE. And it cannot be summoned from the graveyard. And if you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card to select 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard and to special summon them. This effect is a bit too specific at first, but it's actually a pretty good, decent one. It is outclassed obviously by one of their continuous spell cards, which we'll look at later, but it's still worth running at least 1, maybe 2, depending on how you feel like it. Their next monster, their final level 1, is Infernity Randomizer, a warrior type monster for some inexplicable reason. And once per turn, while you have no cards in your hand, you can draw 1 card, reveal it, and for a monster drawn with this effect, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's level times 200, and for a spell or trap, you take 500 damage. Not exactly what they needed. The damage output is miserable unless you draw into one of their tribute monsters. However, this thing is still worth running at least 2, because it can be special summoned from the graveyard and it's a non-tuner, so combined with Avenger, providing if it's a level 1, it can turn into a Formula Synchron, so because they have access to Quasar builds. So that is a really nice target level-wise, but effect-wise it's nothing impressive in this archetype. The next monster is the first level 2 Infernity DWARF. And while you have no cards in your hand, during the battle between an attacking monster you control and a defense position monster whose defense is lower than the attack of this card, inflict piercing damage. Most of you thought that this means that only he can deal piercing damage, so did Asian Eyes. He placed it on one of his worst cards ever videos. But the truth is that all monsters, while this card is on the field and you have no cards in your hand, can deal piercing damage. So that is neato. And yeah, still you can run it at 1, because it can be a bit cloggy and a bit too restrictive. If you have any more of them, it can clog up your hand really easily. Their next monster is their final tuner monster, Infernity Beetle, a level 2 monster whose effect reads: if you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card to special summon up to 2 copies of itself from the deck. Well, provided with the right setup, you can make it for an easy level 4 synchro, even a Goyo Guardian if you have a nice field setup for it. Always run 3, because its effect is kind of pointless at that point. So yeah, that was their final level 2. Their first level 3 is Infernity Beast. And if its effect is that if it attacks while you have no cards in your hand, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until after the damage step. Well, an archetypal Mirage Dragon, it's a pretty decent one. 1600 if he is performing a direct attack is more than enough to finish off limping opponents. So yeah, this is actually a pretty decent level 3, but there's a later level 3 that is entirely outclasses this one. So yeah, run it once still because it's kind of really useful at times. Their next level 3 is Infernity Knight, a fiend as opposed to a warrior type monster. I guess they reprinted the randomizer, and no, this was supposed to be a warrior, and randomizer was supposed to be a fiend. Who knows? And basically, when this card is on the field destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can discard 2 cards and special summon this card from the graveyard. This isn't this impressive because most Infernities will have emptied their hand in turn 1 if they open up really well. So running this is kind of rendered pointless, but is an excellent target for one of their tribute monsters, which we'll get into later. And yeah, that is pretty much it what I have to say about this. A level 3 you absolutely would consider running is Infernity Necromancer. And when this card is summoned, it is changed to defense position. While you have no cards in your hand, this card gains the following effect. Once per turn, you can special summon 1 Infernity monster from your graveyard, except Infernity Necromancer. Well, always run 3, as I always say about these effects. This effect is just so insanely good, it works wonders with everything. You can bring back their tribute monsters with this, their synchro monsters. One of their level 4 monsters, which is absolutely insane when it's special summoned. This card does wonders with this archetype. And yeah, always run 3. Now the next monster, I mentioned that it has a really good effect when it's special summoned, and you might have heard of it because it's limited. That is Infernity ARCHFIEND, of course. Also a fiend, a level 4, their first level 4. And when you draw this card, if you have no other cards in your hand, you can reveal this card, special summon this card from your hand. When this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Infernity card from your deck to your hand. You must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. Limited for a very good reason. With special summoning, it pulls your entire archetype out of the deck. Well, 1 at a time. But you can literally search other cards, such as their other limited cards, which we'll get into later. But yeah, I would advise running 3 at all times, but since it's limited, hey-ho. Alright, their next level 4 is Infernity Guardian. While you have no cards in your hand, this face-up card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. This is an excellent staller and some nice protection. Yeah, setting this while you have no other cards in the hand will result in the opponent raging his ass off because he can't get rid of it at all. Unless he, of course, tributes it with Kaiju and Lava Golem. So yeah, this is actually a really nice stall option, run 2 max, because it can be a bit cloggy at times. Their next card is Infernity PATRIARCH, another level 4, and it says if it is the only card in your hand, you can special summon it from the hand. You can only special summon 1 Infernity PATRIARCH this way while you have no cards in your hand. If an Infernity monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. Nice protection! That's what I always say, if there is one, of course. But yeah, this is some nice protection from battle or card effects. So Infernity PATRIARCH is a definitely good target for one of their trap cards, which we'll get into later. I keep mentioning it. And yeah, it has a nice special summoning condition, a Bubble Man summoning condition, which, yeah, Bubble Man has an effect that will actually benefit the Infernities here, since it doesn't do jack shit for the elemental heroes. It does it every 16 blue moons when he does something for heroes. But that's not the point. Let's continue on to their next monster, their first tribute monster, Infernity Destroyer. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict 1600 damage to your opponent. You must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. Well, yeah, this is one of their better level 6 monsters. There is another one, but this one is really good because if it attacks a weak monster, you can actually do some nice burning, and 1600 is actually more than enough to finish off limping opponents. So I'd say definitely run this one, 2 or 3, depending on how you like your Infernity decks built. Their other level 6 is Infernity Archer. And while you have no cards in your hand, this card can attack your opponent directly. With 2000 attack points, it's decent, I believe. It's usually used to finish off limping opponents, but yeah, it can prove useful if the opponent has a monster you cannot run over. I'd say run 1 because it's a bit too specific. Yeah. And their final main deck monster is their first 2 tribute monster, Infernity General. And if you have no cards in your hand, you can banish this card from your graveyard to target 2 level 3 or lower Infernity monsters in your graveyard. Special summon them from the graveyard, but their effects are negated. What this means is 2 Infernity Knights for a rank 3, Infernity Beetle with a level 3 for a level 5 Synchro. I don't know. This one, I do not know if you should ever consider running, because negating their effects, well, you can actually bring an Infernity Necromancer back, but negating its effects kinda dampers this card a bit. So yeah, this is not that impressive. However, it's a level 7, combined with Infernity Avenger, it can prove a decent target for one of their Synchro monsters, that being one of them, Infernity Doom Dragon. Their first Synchro monster requires 1 Dark Tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. Once per turn, if you have no cards in your hand, you can select 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy that monster, and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its attack. This card cannot attack during the same turn you activate this effect. Pretty decent removal from there for the time. Attack restriction is kind of odd though, but yeah, this is a really nice effect. It can be resummoned from the graveyard using Necromancer or Mirage, or one of their continuous spell card once we get to it. But this works so well in tandem with their next Synchro monster, that being the manga counterpart of this card, that being Void Ogre Dragon. It's also at level 8. It also requires 1 Dark Tuner, 1 or more non-tuner monsters. And once per turn during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap while you have no cards in your hand, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. This is awesome. A quick negating effect during either player's turn, but sadly it's a once per turn. If it wasn't a once per turn, it would have seen the ban list pretty fast. So yeah, definitely run this one. What else I have got to say about this? It has actually higher defense values than the Infernity Doom Dragon. It has 600 more defense, so yeah, I guess it's better in that way. But you would rarely summon this in defense mode, since you're already probably winning with the Infernities. Alright, I've mentioned that continuous spell many times, and here it is finally. The continuous spell Infernity Launcher, also limited, and this is why. Once per turn you can send 1 Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard. You can send this card to the graveyard and target up to 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard, special summon them, and you must have no cards in your hand to activate this effect. Yeah, limited for a very good reason. It's a once per turn foolish burial, and it sets up the graveyard for its second effect, which is insane. Some decent targets include, well, of course, Infernity Archfiend, Infernity Doom Dragon, well, Infernity General if you're actually running that, Infernity Destroyer, and of course Infernity Archfiend. You can also summon the tuner monsters to go into synchros, to go into other synchro monsters. But yeah, the possibilities of this is really high, and you can just perform pretty much whatever your heart desires with this thing. Alright, their next spell card is another continuous spell, Wave Motion Inferno. While you have no cards in your hand, face up Infernity monsters you control 400 attack and defense. You can send this face up card from the field to the graveyard to send all cards from your hand to the graveyard. Well, attack boost is not that impressive, but the second effect can actually help you if you are having trouble by discarding your hand. This is actually really nice, so run 2, and that's my advice to you. Their next spell card is Zero Max, and it's probably the funniest card in this episode, and you'll see why soon. Activate only if you have no cards in your hand. Select 1 Infernity monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and destroy all face-up monsters on the field with the attack lower than the special summon monster's attack. You cannot conduct your battle phase during the same turn you activate this card. The reason why I said why it's funny is because it has one of the funniest activation conditions you've ever seen. It requires you to have no cards in your hand, and it's like, oh, I can just activate this while I have no other cards in your hand. No, first you have to set this card and then flip it face up in order to activate it. So yeah, that is pretty damn ridiculous for a normal spell card. But yeah, it's actually good because you can again revive some of your synchro monsters, Infernity General, Infernity Destroyer, pretty much any Infernity monster, which is cool. Run at 2. I would advise running it at 2. That's your optimal number. Alright, their last card is the normal spell card, is Into the Void. If you have 3 or more cards in your hand, draw 1 card, and if you do, during the end phase of this turn, discard your entire hand. So kind of an archetypal upstart goblin, but it's kind of weird because it requires you to have at least 2 other cards with this card in your hand in order to activate its effect. But the downside of the activation cost is extremely worth it, because you can actually discard your entire hand, set up your graveyard plays if you have any cards left in your hand, some of your higher level monsters, I believe. But yeah, this is a genuinely good effect. Run at 3. You know, it is a bit specific, but it's still worth running at 3. Alright, their first trap card is Infernity Break. If you have no cards in your hand, target 1 Infernity monster in your graveyard and add one card your opponent controls, banish the first target, and if you do, destroy the second target. Normally, I wouldn't consider this card any good because it usually requires you to banish a monster. However, it banishes any card, which means it can be another, I don't know, a card you have no use for, such as one of their trap cards, which is only usable, I believe, once in every 3 duels. So yeah, this is a decent card, and it pops a free card on the opponent's side of the field. So yeah, it is good. It can disrupt an opponent's attack even. So yeah, I'd say definitely run this one. Their next card is Infernity Force. Activate only when an Infernity monster is selected as an attack target if you have no cards in your hand. Destroy the attacking monster and special summon 1 Infernity monster from your graveyard. Not only does it negate attacks, it also gets you +1. And yeah, you can actually target ARCHFIEND with this and get another plus, so potentially you can go +2. I'd say, again, definitely run this one. Their next card is Infernity Inferno. This is the trap card I was mentioning when I was talking about Avenger. And it says discard up to 2 cards and send the same number of Infernity cards from your deck to the graveyard. So it's an archetypal foolish burial / lava well chain. That is good. It's a bit too specific, but if you're stuck with high level monsters in your hand, this is an excellent target. This is an excellent card to target them and to send them to the graveyard. And you can also dump Avenger into the graveyard. You can dump Archfiend if you're in the graveyard if you feel like it, if you set up your field properly with a Necromancer or something like that. So yeah, run it 2 because it can be a bit too specific sometimes, and you don't want too specific activation conditions most of the time. Their next card is their next trap, Infernity Reflector. Activate by discarding all the cards in your hand. When an Infernity monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, select and special summon that monster from your graveyard and inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. So it's another alternative way to get rid of your entire hand in time. But since it's a trap card, and it requires an Infernity monster to be destroyed by battle, it's a bit too specific. However, it's an excellent target for Infernity breaks. So yeah, bonus points on that one. Their next card is their semi-final card, Infernity Barrier, a counter trap that is also limited. And when an opponent activates a spell, trap card, or a monster effect where you control a face-up attack position Infernity monster and have no cards in your hand, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Yeah, the activation requirements seem way too specific at first, but then you realize you basically won't have that much excuse to put your Infernity monsters, all of them, in defense mode. So yeah, this card is actually insanely good. It is also searchable by ARCHFIEND, which is usually special summoned in attack position. So yeah, I would say run it always at 1, because since it's limited, you know. And their final card is the Phantom Hand, another continuous, on their first continuous trap card. And once per turn, if you control a face-up Infernity monster, you can remove from play all cards in your hand face down until your next standby phase. This effect is really good because if you don't draw into your hand discarding cards in time, or if you're stuck with a bunch of level 1 monsters, of higher level monsters, not level 1 monsters, this can be a decent hand removal for practically anything. So you can make that Guardian indestructible, you can make that Necromancer usable. The possibilities of these hand clearing cards are endless. Well, yeah, I'd say run 3 at all times, because, well, actually, this one's not searchable by ARCHFIEND, so this one's not searchable at all, since it does not have Infernity in its name, but it's still a good card to be running, so yeah, run 3. Alright, and that is it for today's Archetype analysis. I keep messing with Archetype Archive from Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Mine is called Archetype Analysis, gotta get used to that. But anyway, time for the grade. Consistency. Even with Infernity ARCHFIEND and Infernity Launcher being limited, they still have pretty much access to ridiculous amounts of consistency. 2 out of 3 there, because it's not perfect, it's not Fortune Lady consistency or anything. Now, power purely depends on their tribute monsters and synchro monsters, but once they go off, they go off really hard, so that's a 3 out of 3 there. Now, comeback ability, definite 3 out of 3, because these things can get back from the most devastating beatdown ever created. So, a definite 3 out of 3. Protection. For the first time, I'm actually gonna give them a 2 out of 3 in protection, because Infernity Patriarch's protection effect works as a better Necro Guard, and that is always real well appreciated. And as for the versatility, look, it's an Archetype Mana 11 to this very day, so of course it's gonna get a 3 out of 3. When I would be comparing these with Fortune Ladies, I would give them a tied ranking, these Infernities being a bit better, since their comeback ability is a bit more higher than Fortune Ladies. But anyway, this is it for today's Archetype analysis, and next time we'll be taking a look at one of the archetypes that, when I do that video, it's gonna be the end of a much too long, prolonged discussion I had with one of my friends, and hopefully it'll shut him up for him to realize that this archetype is not the best as he claims it to be. Even Infernities are better than that archetype. I'll keep you in the dark for a while once I get into doing that video. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Do not update, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next Archetype analysis. See you all, and have a good day. Peace!